Hello, and welcome to everyone today. We're super excited to continue the human factors conversation with this focus on well-being and corporate social responsibility in the age of COVID-19. This is part of the Techlandia Summit, a week-long event or virtual conference really focused on delivering a better community and outcomes through improved infrastructure and the quality of life. Efficient service delivery, sustainable and equitable growth, and long-term resilience. I'm Jennifer Nolfi, Executive Director for the Center of Retail Leadership at Portland State University's School of Business, and I'll be your facilitator with this session, along with Riley O'Brien, who joins us. She is Vice President of Events and Experience with the Technology Association of Oregon, and she'll be coordinating on the back end. I want to thank TAO for inviting us to participate and to Skip and Riley in particular for all their work and pulling this together and giving us this opportunity. Just a few quick rules of engagement before we get started. All of the participants have been muted, and we'll ask that you remain on mute unless a TAO member unmutes you and calls on you to talk. And we will make this interactive. I don't want you to think it's just going to be a lecture. You may ask or respond to questions in the chat box publicly or privately by directing your message to me or TAO admin, and we will monitor the chat box and respond throughout the discussion. We will also ask you all to engage via the participant icon on your screen. So please engage with us on social media during this session. It will provide more opportunities for others to be part of this conversation. We're excited to share what's happening throughout Techlandia Summit and to get participant takeaways from our events. This session is also being recorded, as I'm sure you heard, and will be found on TAO's YouTube within 24 hours of this event. A huge thank you to all the investors in the Techlandia Summit. We appreciate their sponsorship and are excited to explore topics related to economic resiliency, future of work, human factors, and mobility throughout this week. Finally, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Chris Enlow, who's a Senior Director for Philanthropy, Advocacy and Sustainability at Keene, who's joining me for this session. And I want to just take a few minutes to talk about Chris, because I have had the pleasure of knowing him for many years. He is super engaged in our local community and also at the national level, both on behalf of Keene and because of his background with a focus on community involvement and engagement and really looking out for people and the planet. His whole career has been very mission driven with 14 years at Keene, mostly focused on corporate social responsibility work. And Keene moved to Portland many years ago. They moved up here from California, and ever since then have been really driving the conversation around corporate social responsibility in the athletic and outdoor industry regionally, but also nationally. Chris also worked as the development director for Falmouth Heritage Renewal Jamaica and helping impoverished people of color learn marketable job skills. He has a BS in elementary education and MS in School of Community Resources and Development at Arizona State University. He's super involved with the Conservation Alliance and the preservation of public lands, and drove a bus across country, the Keene bus, to get more people out and involved in protecting their public lands. And then he's also involved, I think I worked with him a lot through the Outdoor Industry Association and their Hague Index, Chris, and then the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. And then I also know that he loves surfing. So I want to thank Chris because he totally was a pinch hitter. As you all saw, we had a little bit of a change in the plan because people's schedules change. And I reached out to Chris and he came through. So thank you, really appreciate having you here. And can you share just a little bit about kind of your background and story so that people get to know you and Keene a little better?
Sure. Jennifer, thanks for the invitation. Pinch hitter is a good way to put it. It's always on Zoom. You got to say it. It's always weird to talk to a screen. I miss seeing people in person. I'm a people person by nature. I think we are as humans, but we'll get back to a little bit more of a norm in the future. So just briefly about myself. I was born and raised in Southern Indiana. Just shout out to anyone from Indiana, if you're remotely part of that world. And I've spent a little bit north of 20 years kind of in the broader corporate social responsibility space. A big chunk of that time was working on the nonprofit side, not only in Jamaica, but I also had a really great opportunity to really shaped who I am to this day. In the Peace Corps, I volunteered in the Peace Corps after getting out of graduate school, and really applied my recreation management degree and looking at volunteerism and small grassroots nonprofits, and being frugal and thinking big but on small budgets. And that was a real life-changing experience for me. And then came back to the States after the Peace Corps, worked in the nonprofit sector in both South Carolina and in the country of Jamaica, and was kind of burnt out on fundraising, communications and development, grant writing, so to speak. And I randomly, this 2006, I found an ad placement on Craigslist, Portland, through a random conversation of a friend of a friend. Portland's the last place worth living in America. I'm like, I don't even know what's going on there. I was in South Carolina. And so I went to Craigslist, and this job popped up to start the Keen's giving program. So I had the great honor to get hired into the company to formalize our philanthropy. And then over the years, expanded into advocacy and then sustainability. So I have oversight in those three areas for the company. And then that's a little bit about me. And then for those of you that don't know who Keen is, we're a footwear company based in Portland, Oregon. We're 17 years old, family-owned business, values-led. And I work directly with the owner, and the owner of the company is heavily invested. About half of our products are made in our own factories, not only in the United States, but we have one in Mexico as well as Thailand. And obviously, in the age of COVID, there's been some pretty abrupt changes in how we manufacture and go to market. But I think just kind of leave it with that. Keen, based in Portland, Oregon.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. That's just amazing. So just kind of following up on that, and you already alluded to kind of the disruption that's happening around COVID. Like, can you talk about some of the things that Keen has done to protect your employers and also customers during this really difficult time?
Yeah, first and foremost, what I remember, it was Friday, March the 13th. That just happened to be the day. My boss comes up to me, he goes, "You got to leave." I go, "What do you mean I got to leave?" He's like, "Out of the office," right? That was the day. It was like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, "You probably want to grab all your stuff." And you could see in his eyes, like, "Oh, wow, this is happening." So our company closed down all our doors, physical doors, obviously, to our employees on Friday, March 13th. Definitely will never forget that day. And, we quickly realized that we could work remotely. It's not easy, and there's a lot of learning curves to it, and things like seeing your colleague making a coffee in the morning. We have really nice coffee stations, and we have a canteen for staff with all organic local foods. And so a lot of these cultural values that we really took for granted, this community, it's been really disruptive that way for us. But we've done a really good job bringing in place ways for us to come together and connect and still keep that Keen company culture alive to the degree we can. And then kind of more specifically, we own our own factories. And one of the things we did out the gate, and I don't want to mix up the questions and answers too much, Jennifer, and cut me off if I'm talking too much too, please.
No, you're good. It's just, this is free flowing. It's all good.
Okay. And so we have a factory with about 1,000 employees in Sriracha, Thailand, if you know where Sriracha is, outside of Bangkok. And we needed to protect them with face masks. And so what we quickly did was convert over one of our footwear manufacturing lines to making masks, initially for just our employees and some of the local businesses in the area. And we upcycled not sock liners, but the linings of shoes, which surprisingly makes a really good mask. And we made masks for our employees, and all of a sudden we're like, well, why aren't we making them for all of our employees? And then we're like, well, why don't we donate a bunch of these things? And so what turned out to be this idea in the factory turned into being about 250,000 pairs, or 250,000 total masks that we've actually donated out to the community locally in Portland, as well as making sure all of our employees get it. And we've since been connecting with a lot of our retail accounts and making that go forward. I don't know if that totally answers the question, but it's just an example of something we've quickly done. And then the only other piece is we're trying to spend a lot more time on letting people talk and listen and share their thoughts, because this is my house. my wife, I can't believe I just said that. If she heard me, she'd be so mad right now.
Eddie would not be happy with that.
My wife made me call. Anyway, you're in my house, right? And so we're kind of more exposed and vulnerable. And so we've been trying to make a conscious effort to embrace that. And then when I don't have kids, but when my friends' kids run through the screen, like take a minute, let it happen, and begin to explore a different work world. So we began our people and culture team, what we call human resources, is really focused in on the health and well-being. Hence, one of the first words of this whole sessions around well-being, and we're definitely very conscious of that. And then all of our managers are constantly asking, how are you doing? Obviously we have to get into business, but there's been more personal time during the calls. It makes it more challenging, but we found it's been very helpful and important to do.
I totally hear you on the remote part. I mean, as an employee, and I'm also doing my MBA at PSU right now, just having everything is different because it's remote, and like the technology seems to take energy out of you, as opposed to when you're with somebody, that human interaction seems to give you energy. And so I haven't yet figured out how to work that energy piece into the screen part. And I when I go to Fred Meyer, I see your masks all the time, and I've actually asked some of the employees there about them, because there's a lot of different masks out there, and they're just super complimentary in how they fit and everything. So and the fact that they're upcycled makes it even more compelling, right? You were able to take away waste that might have gone into or materials that might have gone to the waste stream and repurpose them, which is consistent with Keen's mission anyway. So
and what I neglected to say is, a part of this, in the age of COVID, we very quickly wanted to be a part of helping the community in our own way, and in the way that's authentic for us. And so we launched what we initially called this idea of Together We Can Help. There's a lot of this togetherness coming forward, and out the gates, we actually donated 100,000 pairs of first quality stuff out of our warehouse. It wasn't B grade. It wasn't stuff we were selling, at half price off to a wholesale account somewhere. It was just product we pulled out of our own warehouses, because our owners somebody probably could use a pair of shoes right now,
Right.
just a sense of like togetherness. And we offered up to our fans, hey, do you know someone in your local community, whether it's someone at the grocers, someone in construction, a mom just needs a pair of shoes, right? And we gave away those shoes in just a matter of like 3 days. We had submissions in from around the world, so it was pretty compelling. And then we build on that with this Together We Can Help mask donation program, and that's when we outfitted 10,000 employees at Fred Meyer, which is a grocery store chain in the Northwest. For those of you that
that's good. Thank you for calling it out. Right. And I think that donation of shoes is we've got the highest unemployment rates, right? Record is since the Great Depression. And unfortunately, I don't think that's, we're seeing stores are starting and communities are starting to reopen, but I think it's going to be a while before the economy sees that recovery. And so I don't think that demand is going to go away. And it's really wonderful for you guys to be meeting that need. On the retail, have you opened up your retail stores at all, or kind of where are you in that phase?
We actually technically only own 2 stores. Obviously, a lot of wholesale, meaning the retail stores,
Right.
At least the ones in the United States, mostly still closed. Different ones open up in different phases. We're opening up our flagship store next week, July 9th. It's either 6th or 9th. It depends on a few variables. Keene are going to be more conservative than the governor, Kate Brown of Oregon. I think we stepped back a phase, I believe, recently, and we're gonna stay even further behind that. We're not in any rush, and we do want to obviously open up retail, and we're gonna be very cautious about that. We even have things like a fit shield, so you still got to try on the shoes, and we want to have people to help fit you correctly at the fitting stool. So we've designed these special fit shields, so there's a little bit of protection between you and the fan or the customer. And we actually made those available to our retail accounts. We were just going to make 100 and give them as thank yous to get people back in business. Mm-hmm. And we ended up getting incredible amount of demand. And for us, in our size of business, we distributed over 600 fit shields to a variety of retail accounts around the country to give them the tools so they can open up. And so we've been very thoughtful that way. And then behind the scenes, specifically on how we work in terms of finances. I don't want to go to a ton of details, but we were just changed our terms of credit to give our accounts. We're like, look, don't pay us for 90 days. Just do what you can. Keep your people employed. Please sell our shoes when it makes sense. Just don't pay us now. So it was really well received that way. And then I'm gonna shut up after this. The very last thing is there's a reality of selling digital. And so
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
We have had a series of working sessions. See, this is what you have to see when you're home. That's my wife right there.
Hi, Sveti. I'll probably have my dog barking at some point when the mailman shows up. So it's all good.
But anyway, welcome to my home. So I completely lost my train of thought on that, but I forgot. Sorry, my wife just threw me off. What was my last sentence?
We were talking about the retail. I think just opening the retail slowly and phasing it in, and then giving your suppliers DTC, 90 days to have more leniency in paying back, so that they're not worried to keep their people employed.
And the last thing is we have some larger retailers, but we have a lot of outdoor independent specialty retailers too, and they also have online presence. And the reality is there's a switch, right? People are going to be buying online. It doesn't mean they still don't want to support their local retail account. And so what we actively did is we've created, I believe, 12 sessions now, weekly sessions on how to do email marketing, how to pay for Facebook ads. And so we've just grabbed expertise across our company to provide 1 hour sessions to our retail accounts, and they've been really well received. We're saying take a break, try what you can, and also give them some resources to sell online. I mean, we're not telling them to sell Keen. We're just trying to empower them to use these new skill sets that they have to quickly begin to take on. And again, this idea of together we can help.
Well, especially for small businesses, right? They're struggling just to figure out how to survive in this market. And many of them have had to pivot online when traditionally it was probably more of a brick and mortar type approach. And so while they're trying to make that transition, not knowing where to go for those tools and stuff, and having you as a key partner, giving them those tools and that support is really amazing partnership, and will probably keep them on as partners going forward because you were there for them. Super important.
Like one of the things early on I learned at the company and why, and from a philanthropic perspective in terms of our nonprofit partnerships is if you're generous and you're consistently generous, people will remember you. How do we gauge brand awareness and aided versus unaided awareness? And, Keen's not really known, but, we know in our heart of hearts that like in moments like these same retail accounts are not, and that's not why we're doing it, but they're not going to forget that we actually stepped out of the normal business relationship because we realized we had to do it for a lot of different reasons. And sometimes it's okay to be human and support each other, removed of commerce. We obviously want to sell our shoes. It's kind of what pays our bills, but this was a real test to the company's values in a lot of respects.
Yeah. Have you guys seen more, you do direct to consumer, right? So have you seen an uptick on sales direct to consumer from your website for e-commerce or not? Is it?
I'm not going to use any numbers, but that's what's paying our bills right now. And we've seen a significant surge in our e-commerce business on our own platform. We didn't turn on advertising till about, I believe, 2 weeks ago. We just turned it off. We still had e-commerce. We were still doing emails and whatnot, but we were trying to be very sensitive to what we were saying and when we were saying it, just because of everything that's going on. But we've put a lot of emphasis on the direct to consumer, plus also ways for our retail accounts to do better direct to consumer. So we've done a consolidated effort on anything digital. We're not completely abandoning brick and mortar, but we realized this is the moment when we had to make that shift. So it was, all hands on deck on providing better resources for inline product as well as new featured product for digital assets, whether it's through email or social or their actual website channels, and then all the related content that goes along with that. And but that's a really important part. We definitely want to see wholesale open up. That's the majority of if you look at a pie chart, the majority of our income comes through those accounts.
Yeah.
So it's important for us.
Absolutely. I think going forward, even when we come out of COVID, there's still, I mean, we were already moving into this multi-channel industry with people buying online and in-store and wanting that seamless experience. I think this has just helped. Some companies have had to advance quicker to adopt that kind of online presence, but it's not going to go away. And so I think more brands will be better positioned to deal with the online e-commerce as well as the brick and mortar, because people are still going to want to connect in person and try and experience new products. And I mean, the Keen Garage is always so fun to go into because you get to experience product. The displays are really authentic. And so I think people are going to want both all those channels to purchase through an experience.
It's definitely not going to go away, but it is now a reality that direct-to-consumer is a very important part of a company's business. I don't want to share numbers. This is a privately held company.
Well, that's fine. No, I'm not asking you to, yeah.
It went from an inane, anyway, it's much more important today. And I doubt that that's going to shift anytime soon.
Can I go back to I'm just curious about like your production and ability to shift from making shoes to masks. I mean, is that an easy thing to do in terms of the equipment involved, or is that asking a secret?
No, it's not asking. I think if I can speak openly, I think it was more of a challenge of us as a company, because you're creating a new product, right? Forget it if it's a shoe or whatever it is. It's a brand new product. It's a brand new SKU. There's all this legalese. There's labeling. It's not even in your purchase management system. It's not connected in your digital platform. It's not available to your wholesale accounts. It's like literally creating a new business unit overnight. So there was a lot of headaches from a cultural perspective to bring this online pretty immediately. We actually started selling them yesterday on our website, and this did not exist 60 days ago, or probably 70.
That is so fast.
And we went from just a pure philanthropic donation, and then through that process, we realized, wait a second, I think people want to buy these, and they need to buy these, and then have had an opportunity to sell wholesale to some of our larger accounts for their staff, as well as for their customers. And then it's on our own website as of, I believe it actually technically is yesterday. And so that's really the phase 2 of our mass program. We already have the technical expertise on staff and refined our cutting dies. We already have the equipment. It's our own factory. So that's what made it possible. Mm-hmm. Our factory management realized that they needed masks. They couldn't buy them. And so they were making them in the sample room. People can experiment in the sample room, and then all of a sudden they're like, you know what, we're just going to dedicate an entire line to this process. And they utilized existing materials that we would typically have put in our footwear. And that was really our phase 1. And then obviously with the ones we're selling now, it gave us enough time to source the correct materials, to develop the required non-medical grade mask standards, whether it's for breathability, permeability, color fastness. There's a variety of standards that you definitely need to meet, and we set them at a pretty high bar because we're distributing them globally. But I mean, it was not easy, but we had the ability to do it in our own factory, and I think that's what made the difference.
Well, and I think
I'd love questions from people.
It really talks. We'll get to them. We will.
Yep. No, I'm just saying in general.
In the next 15 minutes, so if people want to start posting questions in the chat or whatever, we can get to those in a couple of minutes, and then we can have you like unmute your mics and all that stuff so it's more interactive. That the example of doing the mask exemplifies how Keen was resilient, which is consistent with this coming up with a new product line, but also serving the well-being of your employees and partners, and then the donation piece too, which hits so many different pieces of Keen's mission, which is really amazing. And I think, isn't the product, like normally to develop a new product, it's like 12 to 18 months, right? So to think about you guys doing that in such a short period of time, and I think we're seeing that necessity to rapidly innovate across a lot of different industries and aspects of our lives right now to overcome COVID. And hopefully a vaccination would, ideally be coming along with that. But I think I had Just one more kind of question. Can you talk, I don't know how many people are familiar with the Outdoor Industry Association Hague Index and the Sustainable Apparel Coalition and kind of that work about corporate social responsibility and an industry that's known as being really dirty, how you guys are involved at the national and even international level. And I thought, especially with a pretty big audience, international audience, could you just talk a little bit about that work? That'd be great.
So don't worry about the acronym so much, the Hague Index, but what it is, it's a tool that a factory or facility can use to measure its social and environmental footprint and get a score. And it's the concept of it is to get everyone to use the same thing, because if you typically go into, I don't know if we have manufacturers on here, but if you typically go to a manufacturer like, hey, I have this standard, these are my requirements, sign this policy, and then they have 9 other brands asking 9 different things around the same subject. So it's requires a lot of unnecessary work. And so the Hague Index was born about 10 years ago now, around this idea of, can we have a common tool that all factories use? And now today, Keen is using it for our own factories. There's roughly, I think, 20,000 factories in the system. And, you know, it's laborious, but it is effective. I personally work on it with our own factory management. And you can get a quick view, like a dashboard view of waste management, chemical management. There's 7 different categories. And this idea of going from, I'm not trying to sell this product on you, by the way. I just had a Greek style coffee for my wife, so I'm like a little jittery all of a sudden. But and anyway, there's like foundational type level and progressive and aspirational, and you know, even talks about even end of life. So you can quickly get from a management perspective how you're performing, and then how you're performing amongst your peers. Because I can take Keen's factory in Leon, Mexico, and rate it with exactly the same type of manufacturing facilities. And so you can quickly go, hey, look, looks like we're performing about in the mean, but you know, we're pretty low over here. And from a brand perspective, I've used the Hague Index. You can also do the same thing with your own company, not just your manufacturing partners. And I think of it very simply as a way to operationalize sustainability, and you can see where you're performing really low and then dig into that respective subject matter, and then kind of pick apart how you could build out those competencies in your own company. So I found it to be super helpful. And then is also, today it's evolved. Now you can get a carbon footprint and pairs, which is pretty great to see. And
this it's still industry facing, right? It's not consumer facing. I know there was talk about it at one point. Is there still talk about making it consumer facing or no?
Beta testing of consumer-facing labels as it relates to the Hague Index are going to be taking place this year and then into next year. And as an example, I don't know if anyone on this call has ever heard of Zalando. They're a huge e-commerce player in Europe. I wouldn't quite compare them to Amazon, but they're pretty significant, more in the fashion space, fashion and footwear. And we obviously sell there, and that is a requirement for any brand that they sell. Starting in 2023, you have to do the Hague Index. You have to report it to them. And I think by 2023, it'll be more of a consumer-facing label. And we're noticing the same thing, REI. Again, I'm talking about companies that Keen sells into in the outdoor industry space. REI, Recreation Equipment Incorporated, out of Seattle. They're doing a very similar requirement. They're not quite using the word requirement. Zalando, German company. You know, they get straight to the point. Mm-hmm. Germans, they don't mess around. And so it's great to kind of see that the Hague is actually getting legitimate velocity when you start getting large retailers requiring that.
Yeah. And then just briefly, a little bit about the Sustainable Apparel Coalition too.
Yeah. And so the Sustainable Apparel Coalition is really the group that kind of took this body of work through groups like the Outdoor Industry Association more than a decade ago, kind of created this eco index. And then it got to a point where they're like, oh, we need a standalone nonprofit organization to actually manage this process. And so they're really a convener of all these smart minds and people, and tons of brands use it, the Keens of the world to the Pradas of the world. So it's just like, it's not just a footwear company, it's a full spectrum. You know, it's working across multiple sectors. And now the tools are technically managed by Hague.co. And then the convener of kind of the brain trust is the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. I think that kind of answers it a little bit.
Yeah, we were really, when I was at now in Prosper Portland, but PEC, like I remember being involved in the very initial sections of it, and we provided some money for some smaller businesses in Portland to participate in the index and get some technical assistance. So it's been really amazing to see that kind of evolve.
Yeah.
So with that, why don't we open it up for questions? If anyone has a question, you're welcome to post it in the chat or unmute yourself, turn on your video so we can see you and ask a question. Would love to hear from you all. Okay, I know there's a delay, but I'm expecting to see my screen light up with chat questions in just a second here.
Thanks for the nice words, Sumita, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, about the donation.
Yes, that was really nice.
I appreciate
it's
that.
Sushmita, yeah.
Sushmita.
Thank you. Yes, so I'm Sushmita, and I work for IBM. I'm here, in a personal capacity, and I'm also a part of an internal CSR influencers group. So I was pretty impressed by all the things that Keen has done. And I did have a question about sustainability in apparel, because this is something I struggle with in my own mind, that in order to capture an audience, you need to keep out bringing new things, right? New styles, new designs, and yet that kind of goes against sustainability. So you have to build in things to break down. And I understand the Higgs help with that in a certain way, but do you have like an approach which balances what you know that you need to do versus what is best for the planet?
That's a really good question. I'll answer to the best of my knowledge, but one little added piece for those that don't understand the Hague Index, one major section is end of use or end of life. And so it's purposely trying to shift people to start thinking about durability, repairability, upcycling or downcycling. And so we all can perform pretty good, but if we really want to be best in class, that's the whole, in my view, that's the kind of the point where it's trying to shift. And so for us, in terms of like circular design and thinking circular economy, Keen's known for really durable, long-lasting footwear. And it's something that we're really, really proud of. So baseline for us is, continue to make things that last. I think the part that we need to work on is how do we get those back and repair them or refurbish them, or how can we bring those back in the system? We don't have any fancy answers. We did invest into a repair center we have our own distribution center for the United States and outside of Louisville, Kentucky, but that's on hold just because of the realities of what's going on with COVID-19 in terms of future investments. Not a good thing. But also for us, we're thinking about designing out waste and toxic chemicals, if you think about circular design and thinking. And so, we have a very focused intention on certain classifications of chemistry, and I don't want to go into any detail here. I can, but, we're looking at whole things like, what we don't want antimicrobials to use in our products to manage for odor, right? And that's an important element. It's not also, I agree with what you're asking, but you also have to think about the design and the chemistry, and then durability. And then from a kind of a thinking about alternatives to petroleum, we're looking at plant-based and bio-based materials that can still perform to the same level as the midsole, which is usually an EVA or a polyurethane, or the rubber outsole. And so we're, again, over time, consciously trying to look at those three bigger buckets and how we can kind of shift our own and, dare to dream that there's no such thing as waste, right? We send something out the door, you use it, you like our shoes, you send them back, and we take them back and we refurbish them, maybe give them a second life through a donation, or, we upcycle or downcycle depending on kind of which way that goes. And we're by no means anywhere close to it, but we realize that just making more stuff in a resource constrained world we live in is not the future we want to see. We want to see, be a part of the solution on that. Good question. I don't know if it totally answered it, but hopefully some of it.
It did. It did. Thank you. I mean, it's great to know that you're thinking of everything, not only the take back, but also the chemicals and the
Yep,
design. And, you know, of
really
course, you have to
important.
have a price point, so it has to be practical as well.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
so the secret that we, in the supply chain specifically, we have I use this all the time. It's a very simple triangle. Everyone knows a triangle. It translates anywhere I travel in the world. We actually do a lot of manufacturing in Thailand and India and Cambodia specifically, and starting to in Vietnam, but safe, effective, and affordable, no matter what we do in the supply chain, obviously has to be safe for human health and the environment. And that's kind of my responsibility. It's got to be effective. It still needs to meet those performance attributes. You know, if we want to have a shoe that managed for odor, we can't get something that's environmentally safe that doesn't actually perform, right? It has to meet the certain quality assurance standards. And the third piece of the puzzle is just a reality. It has to be affordable, not only for like your margin or your bill of materials, but also for the consumer. And so it's a fine balance, and our objective is always to hit all three check boxes. It's not always, you have to kind of give and take a little bit here or there, but you know, it's helped kind of bring this idea of safe or CSR forward on our decision-making process for manufacturing. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? I have more, but I want to give other people a chance. It's not all about me.
Yeah, happy to take on hard questions too. I'm okay to be put on the spot if you have a lingering thought or critical question.
Chris, while we're waiting for people, can I ask, you know, I know we already talked about this a little, you have an example, but, you know, we're hearing more and more about blockchain, like PSU launched a blockchain program, and we're hearing more about how it's important for transparency in the supply chain and traceability. And as consumers want to know more and more about where their products come from, whether it's food or a shoe, are you guys doing, what are you doing with blockchain at Keen?
You know, I would preface it with saying it's not a formal part of our CSR sustainability objectives or key performance indicators for the year, but we're actually actively using it as an example. Several footwear companies use a product by Unify called Reprieve, and it's made out of post-consumer recycled plastic water bottles. And then you can reprocess it and make it as a synthetic upper in your shoe or a lining or a webbing material. And so we've transitioned all of our webbing. We make a lot of sandals, water sandals, to this recycled content. Again, thinking about, let's reduce our use of virgin materials and harvest and upcycle a waste stream and create something of greater value out of a water bottle. And then our Japanese market, which is there's a point to this, our Japanese market, which is a very important market for our company, they really not only like the story of using recycled plastic water bottles for all of our sandal uppers, but they also want to say how many water bottles, right? This sandal has 7 water bottles or 10 or 12. And the only way you can do that is through blockchain technology. And so what we'll do is we'll design all of our shoes, and then we'll send off the uppers to Unify to validate, and they have this special coating strips within their filaments so they can pick up to know that in fact it is their material.
Oh my gosh.
So that's what validates our claim around how many plastic water bottles. And so it's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to validate it. And that's a very real example. We were just updating our specification sheets. We're actually already working on our spring summer 21 product line, and we're working with this supplier on validating the plastic water bottles, and they have to go through the whole process at their I think actually sent to their lab in North Carolina where they do it, but they can't do that without blockchain technology. And it sounds like I don't know that much about the subject, but I do know that we're taking advantage of this technology in very real time to authenticate our marketing claims.
That's amazing. I think that's more and more customers are wanting to see that. They want to see real authentic data and not just greenwashing, right? Because there's been a lot of that out there too. And so blockchain really gives you that. So we have a comment from Marcelino. Chris, thanks for sharing your story, and thank you and Keen for going above and beyond what many companies are doing. Jennifer, thanks for moderating. Are there COVID-related changes, innovations that you see remaining even on the other side of this? Marcelino, you can, I could actually let you probably ask it yourself, but thank you.
You know, obviously retail is going to change. This idea of a fit shield, you know, I mean, it's physical. I mean, if you go to like a convenience store, there's going to be a shield there, right? So we're going to evolve the fan experience in our stores and how many people come in, where they come in, how it works. It's definitely going to change permanently. Our headquarters, who's allowed in, who's not allowed in. We're in the process of redefining essential services and what needs to physically be in the building, what jobs never need to be in the building, and then kind of the ones in between. And so that's, you know, we're going to have some permanent long-term changes. And, you know, even things like, I think a very simple example of that is, you know, gone are the days of coming to work with a cold. And I'm guilty. I bet you everyone on this call has gone to work with a cold. It's like, God, I got to go to that meeting. I shouldn't go. I don't feel good today. You know, that's just not going to be allowed. I mean, that's just goodbye, over. And I think things like that are a good thing. Very recently, the very last thing I'll say on this, because I could say 50 things, but we took advantage of this downtime at our company's headquarters that houses about 300 people in Portland, Oregon, and completely updated our HVAC system. Not a cheap process, right? But we realized that that's a reality, and employees are going to start asking, you know, about indoor air quality. What are you doing to manage for indoor air quality? How are you managing for sanitation in the restrooms, the number of people? And we're taking a very, very hard look at how we evolve permanently into the future. I think that gets to some of your questions.
That's a significant investment for sure, and undertaking. Wow. We have another question from Thomas Doherty. And I want to recognize Thomas helped us put together this particular track and was amazing in pulling all the different pieces. So do you want me to read the question, or do you want to read it, Chris? What's easiest? Want me to read it?
Let's do one at a time, because it looks like there's at least 4. I don't have my reading glasses on.
So I'll read the first one.
So I'm squinting my eyes.
I know, to take mine on and off, it's one of the challenges. Okay, hi Chris. What do you see as the role of outdoor apparel groups in working to expand access and use of the outdoors and backcountry recreation by communities of color?
Great question.
Great, yes. Thanks, Thomas.
Don't have a fancy answer. You know, I do, you know, what we've done at Keen specifically is, you know, early on, we had the fortune to meet a lady by the name of Rue Mapp, who runs an organization called Outdoor Afro. And it didn't exist at the time. This was over 10 years ago. And obviously Outdoor Afro is about getting the Black community to get into the outdoors. It's about increasing outdoor participation for that user group specifically. And we just connected with her early, and we've really proud long-term partner. You know, we have like a multi-year commitment in place, you know, in the 6-figure area, as well as we're on their board. And then very recently, we just doubled down. We were really inspired is the wrong word, but anyway, with a lot of the things going on recently, we were inspired to want to double down on our investment with Outdoor Afro and really hone in on how to better address this first question here. And that's just an example of what we are doing specifically. And then secondarily, we have an annual youth grant program that we do. It's roughly $100,000 in grant giving every year. And we've very purposefully over the years had a very discrete grant related question, like, how are you addressing this issue within your nonprofit organization? We get hundreds of nonprofits that apply every year from around the world. And it was very intentional that we added that. And this year, that was really the major screen by which we chose our grantees. And that's going to shift the emphasis of our granting criteria on a go-forward basis. Those are just a few examples.
Well, I think, Chris, we've seen more discussion, I know, intending like outdoor retailer and working with OIA, more focus on getting underserved communities outdoors. And I think isn't there also a group like, I think, Beat Northwest that focus on getting Latinx people
Yes.
outdoors. So, and
Yeah.
even the face of the industry seems to be changing. I know when we take PSU is fortunate to have a partnership with Outdoor Industry Association and brand sponsor a group of students that are selected to go. And, you know, PSU is the most diverse university in Oregon. And so we always make sure that the students that go look like our students. And I remember the first show we went to, we had a couple Latinx students, and they're like, there are no people that look like me here. Like, why aren't we up there on that panel talking about diversity? But now, a few years later, obviously the show wasn't this summer because of COVID, but I know the last show we went to, we were seeing more diversity, and they felt more, they were more excited to work in the industry because I think there's a concerted effort to make it more inclusive.
Yeah. You know, those are all good comments. Other things, I think you can see it right now if you go to, I'm not trying to sell Young Keen, but if you go to our Instagram account, it's just Keen, Keen, if you use Instagram as an example. And we've done an okay effort to kind of project diversity in the outdoors. I think you'll see a noticeable difference, very intentional recently, and really giving a voice to communities of color that still like the outdoors just as much as the other person does, so to speak. And, you know, it's been very intentional with some of our existing nonprofit partners. And then, you know, internally, we're going to formalize, can't believe we've never done it sooner, but we're going to formalize a screen. We have what's called an all-in committee that focuses on justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, JEDI work.
Oh, great.
And so before anything goes live, whether it's an ad campaign or a brand marketing campaign, sales meeting, collateral of any sorts, they get a screen to kind of have unfiltered comments on things they might be concerned about, whether it's the imagery or the words. And it's still early days on that formal process for us as a company, but it's going to be very helpful in calling ourselves out when we're predominantly a white place of employment. That's the reality at Keen. And I'm not ashamed to say that. It's just, that's the reality we're in. And we know we have a lot of work on this space in our own doors, not only the messaging we're projecting outward.
Yeah, I think that was the other part of Thomas's thing was in terms of have you looked at your diversity in your employees and vendor base to be more inclusive?
Employees, for sure, it's going to be a focus. Vendor base, I don't have a lot of really insight into that really at this point right now, but they're all great questions.
And we're doing the same thing at PSU because we tend to have not as much diversity in faculty that we'd like, and our students want to see that diversity in the faculty and staff they're interacting with. So it's definitely something that we are committed to working to too. And I know you have a hard stop at 2. We have another question from Sushvita. Hi, Chris. For getting employees back to work, do you see any employees having reservations about getting back before a vaccine is available? Can you share Keen's approach? Thanks.
That's a great question too. I don't have a lot of insight into what the plan is, and what I'd said earlier on is we're not a conservative company, so it's really funny for me to say this out loud, but we're going to be super conservative on this subject, and we're in no rush to jeopardize anyone's health. We're in no rush to put people in harm's way. And so specific to the vaccine, that's actually a really good question. We are going to be opening up our doors again soon, and people are going to start traveling at some point for business related, but we're going to do the best we can based on science and what the CDC or the World Health Organization has to say. But I'm imagining these changes in a certain sense will take place before a vaccine is available. But I do know that people that are concerned, or they might have people in high risk groups in their own homes, they're by no means required to come in the workplace. So we're going to be very flexible with people that have concerns like this idea around the vaccine. And if that's your concern, then Keen's going to make it work, that you can still stay employed and still be productive. Maybe your role might have to shift. Maybe you have to do something different in the company. maybe you might be fortunate enough to be in a position where it can go virtual. So we're definitely, we're open. We have nothing set in stone. We're nimble, and again, we want to be super conservative on the health and well-being of our employees. Kind of that idea of safe, effective, and affordable. Everything's focusing on the safe right now. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks for your questions. We really appreciate it. There's one more from Sonia. I just noticed that you make steel toe shoes, and I'm wondering if workers that are required to wear steel toe boots are able to wear Keen shoes for work. And if so, is this a growing group of adopters? I know I'm not the user in this case, but it seems like those working in hotter climates would appreciate the cooler and more comfortable shoes.
I don't know if I totally understand the question, but yes, we do have a utility line that focuses on steel toe product. But within our utility product, we actually make a variety of warm weather steel toe shoes that are almost like a sandal, or they're more like a tennis shoe that still meets some of these required standards. So if you're like, let's say you're working in a warehouse and you're required to wear steel toe, we have some really appropriate product. If you're working in Florida and it's hot, right? That's a hot environment. It's a pretty easy one to explain. And yeah, there is products designed for different climates, and not just the traditional all leather upper, 8-inch boot, waterproof lining. So that there are different products that we offer. Yeah. And I think that kind of addressed it a little bit.
Does that get your question, Sonia?
I think it was getting at it.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Huh. You just got your Keen work sneakers. Yeah. Great. Thanks, Mark. Thank you for the business.
That's awesome. Perfect timing. We set that all up, of course.
Hey, Mark, we want to know how the product performs. I really encourage you to add your comments on that particular product on our website if and when you are inspired during your carpentry hobby.
Awesome. Anyway, thanks, Kip. Any other questions before we wrap up? As a PM myself, I love providing feedback. Good.
Yeah, and then the last thing I'll say, if you're industry related, like, we do have a pro deal site that you can apply to. It's pretty easy, keenfootwear.com/PRO. It's not obviously for everyone, but there's some basic guidelines if you are applicable or not. Again, I don't know who exactly is on our call, so it's hard for me to kind of judge that, but we do offer it to industry folks. And then we're pretty open to nonprofit groups that, again, meet some certain standards for us. So if you know an affinity nonprofit group like Your Version Outdoor Afro, or it could be all kinds of groups that are getting folks in the outdoors, they typically can access that for their staff as well. And it's 40 off retail, which is a pretty sweet deal.
We might have some students that need that.
That's enough of the elevator pitch on the sale. So Jennifer, note that during this this discussion that I did do a plug about Keen footwear.
You did, as you should have. Oh my God, after calling you at the 11th hour, literally. And I think I mean, I hate to say this, but I don't know that everyone knows about Keen and that you're here in Portland doing this amazing stuff, and that you actually manufacture shoes here, which is really unique in this industry. So you should, absolutely.
Yeah, make shoes in Portland. I'm really proud of our, we make half of our shoes out of our own factories, and not many footwear companies can say that. And we say that proudly. Owning your own manufacturing is expensive. We have thousands of employees because we have, instead of hundreds. But at the same time, we can pivot quickly and make masks. So that's the benefit of it. Like I said, I do have a hard topic too.
Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate it. Tell Sveti, thank you for putting up with us. And again, take care of yourself.
Off to my 2:00 Zoom, product compliance.
Oh, fun. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Okay, so I see that we've been talking a lot about human factors, about laboratory design. It'd be great. I can, I can share a link on the Outdoor Industry Association. I can get a link and send that to you, Thomas, if anyone, or maybe there's another way. Riley, is there another way to share that information with everybody?
Yeah, we can send it out to the folks that participated in this session today.
Okay, I'll get you the link because I don't know where it is offhand. Oh, there's a link above too. Oh, for this event. All right, we'll get it out to people if you're interested. Were there any, thank you everyone for making time to join us today. Really appreciate it. Were there any last questions before we kind of wrap it up? And I just want to thank TAO in particular and Thomas and Riley for helping pull this together, because with all the changes, I know I put extra pressure on you, so thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. We really appreciate your support.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
And thanks, Sushmita.
Thank you, Jennifer. It was a great session, very interactive, and I thought Chris was he was both frank and of course he did a plug, but it is really amazing, like as a relatively small mid-sized company, how much they are doing for their employees.
He's super real too. He doesn't BS, and he's just really passionate about the work he does. So, and not just for Keene, but for everyone. So it was great to have him on. And he has so much knowledge in this space too.
All right, well, we're going to wrap up, and
Okay.
hopefully we'll see everybody later on in the week for our other sessions.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jennifer.
All right.
Take care.
You too. Bye.